The Garmin Venu was launched as a counterpart to the Vivoactive 4, with the only real difference being that the Venu had an AMOLED display while the Vivoactive 4 had an MIP display. And AMOLED displays were not that popular at that time, at least for sports watches, which is why this watch was overshadowed by the Vivoactive 4 for a long time. However, the Venu 2 and Venu 2 Plus managed to step out of the Vivoactive's shadow, and now that both the Venu 3 and Vivoactive 5 have been released, the new Venu is much more than just the AMOLED counterpart of the Vivoactive. The Vivoactive 5 now also has an AMOLED display, but the watches are different both in terms of software and hardware. In this video we will take a look at the pros and the cons of both watches. Now we won't talk about all the features because for this I already have separate reviews on this channel. Here we will specifically talk about the differences so that you know which watch is the right choice for you. So let's get started. Both the Vivoactive 5 and the Venu 3 place a lot of emphasis on everyday usability above all else and a bit less on robustness in return. Therefore, unlike Garmin's high-end outdoor watches such as the Fenix 7 Pro, they are both not made of titanium or stainless steel, but for the most part of plastic. This means that they are much lighter than these outdoor watches. The Vivoactive 5 weighs just 36 grams while the Venu 3 weighs 46 grams or 40 grams depending on the size, both of which are very light compared to other sports watches. But the difference of the used materials also allows these watches to be much cheaper than the outdoor watches. So the Vivoactive 5 at the moment costs like $300, where the Venu 3 comes in at around $500, which is certainly not cheap, but definitely significantly cheaper than the Fenix, Epix or Endure watches. As for the materials, yes, both watches are made mostly of plastic as mentioned, but not entirely. The bezel of the Vivoactive 5, for example, is made of aluminum, while the Venu 3 uses stainless steel, in this case even for the buttons. This is one of the reasons for the difference in weight and price, but I think that the stainless steel bezel and buttons of the Venu 3 definitely make a difference and make the watch look a bit more premium than the Vivoactive 5. This is also due to the fact that the bezel comes with a texture, which is also not the case with the Vivoactive. Otherwise, as already mentioned, the Venu 3 is available in two different sizes. These have a case diameter of 41 and 45 mm, but both variants have exactly the same thickness at 12 mm. The Vivoactive 5 is only available in one version, which is between the two Venu models in terms of case diameter at 42.2 mm, but it is significantly thinner at 11.1 mm. And then there is also a difference in the display, because although the Vivoactive 5 is slightly larger than the Venu 3S, the built-in display is the same size, namely 1.2 inches with a resolution of 390 x 390 pixels. Logically, the Vivoactive has slightly wider display borders. The Venu 3 is bigger and also has a much bigger display with 1.4 inches and a resolution of 454 x 454 pixels, which is currently Garmin's best resolution together with the Forerunner 965. You can already see that the display of the Venu 3 is significantly larger, but in general both watches provide the same display technology, namely an AMOLED display. As mentioned in the beginning, the Venu was originally launched as an AMOLED counterpart to the Vivoactive 4, and AMOLED displays at that time had a lot of disadvantages, like for example, they were not really readable in direct sunlight, and even more so, the battery life was very bad. But both points have improved a lot over the last couple of years, and we will talk about the battery life more in detail later in this video. Both displays are really super bright, colorful and high contrast. Here you can see the difference to a transflective MIP display, which was previously used in the Vivoactive 4. In my experience, the AMOLED displays are actually very easy to read in all conditions. The bottom line is that I find the Venu 3 is a bit more visually appealing because the stainless steel bezel makes the watch look a bit more premium, the display is also a bit larger and the display edges are narrower. The Venu 2 and Venu 2 Plus were a bit out of the ordinary because these watches, unlike the Venu and the Venu 3, did not come in parallel with a Vivoactive model. And it was exactly these models that helped the Venu series step out of the shadow of the Vivoactive series. The Venu 2 Plus was Garmin's first real approach onto the smartwatch market, and its smart features were unsurprisingly adopted by the Venu 3. These are the first important differences to the Vivoactive 5. The Venu 3 has a built-in speaker and microphone. This allows the watch to play music, for example. You cannot expect the very best quality, but hey, at least the possibility exists. As far as music is concerned, both watches allow you to download songs to the watch and listen to them offline. The Vivoactive 5 has 4 GB of internal storage, while both Venu 3 models have 8 GB. However, it is much more useful for having phone calls because you can not only accept calls with the watch, but also make calls directly via the watch. Now keep in mind that unlike the Apple Watch or the Samsung Galaxy Watch, the Venu 3 does not have its own connectivity, it doesn't have its own LTE and is not like a standalone smartphone, so you need your smartphone connected to the watch in order for all these smart features to work. But if, for example, your phone is in your backpack, you can easily accept and make phone calls with the watch itself. Again, you don't need to expect miracles from the sound quality, but you can totally understand the other person without any problems and vice versa. However, there's another benefit of the microphone that is very useful, especially for Apple users. You can receive messages on the watch, but only Android users can reply to these messages via the watch. Unfortunately, Apple has put a stop to this, so it does not work with a connected iPhone. But you can use the microphone of the Venu 3 to send a text to another person. However, the microphone and speaker of the Venu 3 are mainly used for using voice assistants. So again, you need a connected phone for this, but then you can command the watch to call certain contacts, or you can ask something like, "What's the weather today?"
The forecast is calling for rain today. Daytime temperatures will hover around 13 degrees, with overnight lows around 7.
By the way, to use the voice assistant, the Venu 3 also has an additional button on the right side of the case, so the Vivoactive 5 only has 2 buttons, the Venu 3 has another button in the middle, and if you hold it down you activate the voice assistant. But you can also set other shortcuts for pressing this button. So if all of these smart features are important to you, this might be a first reason to spend a little more money on the Venu 3. Next, let's take a look at the differences in the sports, fitness and health features. A first important difference would be that the Venu 3 has a built-in barometric altimeter, while the Vivoactive 5 does not. This had me quite surprised as the Vivoactive 4 still had a barometer. This means that the Vivoactive 5 can no longer count floors, for example, the Venu 3 does. For sports like skiing or snowboarding, you also no longer see your live ascent or descent. The Vivoactive 5 can detect how many meters of altitude have been covered on the map after completing a workout, but you cannot view the ascents and descents live during a workout. As I said, that's possible with the Venu 3. In addition, the barometric altimeter also allows this watch to have a few additional training modes to choose from compared to the Vivoactive 5, namely of course those where altitude measurement plays a big role. That would be bouldering, climbing or hiking, among others. Also, only the Venu 3 can show you workout animations. Both watches have predefined workouts and both show the muscle groups used, but only the Venu 3 also shows a video animation of how you should correctly perform the exercise. I was also a bit surprised by that, since that was also still possible on the Vivoactive 4. A third difference is that only the Venu 3 is compatible with power meters when cycling. For example, there's Garmin's in-house vector pedal system which can calculate your cycling power as well as other cycling specific metrics. And one last difference is that the Venu 3 offers you the so-called jet lag guide. I didn't do any long trips the last week, so I couldn't really test this feature, but theoretically the Venu 3 can help you get used to a new time zone. For example, the watch will suggest when and how long you should sleep or exercise, or when you should avoid light, for example. And you'll even get tips on nutrition, napping or coffee consumption. But basically that's it in terms of the differences in the sports and health features. So both watches provide a ton of useful features and there are not too many differences in this regard. In all of my reviews, I also always test for the accuracy of the watches, especially in terms of the GPS and heart rate monitoring. The two watches do not differ in the built-in GPS chip. Both offer a GNSS mode, but in contrast to more expensive Garmin watches, they don't offer multiband. However, both watches have proven to be very accurate in my separate reviews. You can find more about this in my respective videos. And I couldn't really find a difference between the GPS accuracy of both watches because, yeah, both provide the same GPS chip. But Things are different with the heart rate monitoring. While the Venu 3 features the 5th generation Elevate sensor, the Vivoactive 5 still uses the 4th generation. As we can see here, the Venu 3 also uses more LED lights, of course, all with the goal of improving the accuracy. But is the new sensor really accurate? This is what I checked for in numerous practical tests. So I wore both watches at the same time on my right and on my left hand, and I wore a chest strap at the same time for comparison. And in order to reduce the statistical bias, I also changed on which arm I wore which watch. Here you can see the results for a hike. In black the ideal curve, which is that of the chest strap. In blue you can see the curve of the Vivoactive 5, and in red that of the Venu 3. As we can see here, there are actually no really noteworthy deviations on the part of both watches compared to the chest strap. Only at this point here at about 52 minutes, the Vivoactive 5 was a bit inaccurate. The average heart rate differs by 0.81 beats per minute for the Venu 3 and by 1.27 beats per minute for the Vivoactive 5, so both are really very good with slight advantages for the Venu. Here while running we have a near perfect result with both watches. If however a watch briefly deviates a bit from the chest strap, it is once again the Vivoactive 5 in blue, but really both watches deliver very accurate results. It gets more exciting when it comes to strength training. Here too it is the Venu 3 in red that is a bit more accurate, because especially in the second half of the workout we see that the Vivoactive 5 does not recognize a few heart rate increases, whereas the Venu 3 always does. Therefore the average heart rate is also closer to that of the chest strap. So overall both watches have a good heart rate accuracy, but the Venu 3 with the new sensor is slightly ahead. One last point we have to talk about is the battery life. These watches are a bit different in size, as I mentioned in the beginning, so there is more space for a bigger battery with the Venu 3. On paper, the Vivoactive 5 lasts up to 11 days in smartwatch mode, which is normal everyday use. The Venu 3 lasts up to 14 days and the Venu 3S lasts up to 10 days. Both watches also offer an always-on mode where you can roughly half the stated run times. In energy saving mode it's 21 days for the Vivoactive 5, 26 days for the Venu 3 and 20 days for the Venu 3S, and in GPS mode it's up to 21 hours, 26 hours and also 21 hours in the same order. If you use GPS, GLONASS and Galileo at the same time and also listen to music, it is 8 hours, 11 hours and again 8 hours. But these are nothing more than just numbers, so let's rather take a look at how the battery life really performs in a normal day during my test phase. I charged both watches after breakfast, so I started with 100% and then I went for a run for a good half hour, after which it was still 97% for both watches. Next I went to the gym for 45 minutes, battery level then 95% for the Vivoactive 5, 94% for the Venu 3. With that my sports program was done for the day, but still I did many things with the watches as I shot the 2 separate reviews among other things. Thus I used many apps and widgets, turned up the brightness and also used the always on mode, for example. At the end of the day the Vivoactive 5 still had 86%, the Venu 3 had 88%. The Vivoactive would therefore last for about 7 days, the Venu 3 for about 8 days. The Venu also has a slight lead in a 1.5 hour hike, where it consumed 7%, the Vivoactive 8%. So both watches are roughly on the same level, but same as for the heart rate accuracy with slight advantages for the Venu 3. Alright, so what can we conclude about both watches? Now first of all I want to emphasize again that in this video I didn't mention all the features of both watches, because both watches have many similarities and I already talked about all the features in my separate reviews. This video was really about the differences of both watches. The Venu 3 differs from the Vivoactive 5 for the most part in that it offers much more sophisticated smart features, especially the features enabled by the microphone and speaker, so the music playback, phone calls and especially the voice assistant. There are also a few minor differences in the sports and health features, including the fact that the Venu 3 offers a barometer and thus, for example, counts floors, the animated workouts, the compatibility with power meters when cycling, and also the jet lag guide. In addition, this watch is also a little more accurate than the Vivoactive 5, thanks to its more modern heart rate sensor. Last but not least, the Venu 3 is also a bit more high-end and nicer looking due to the stainless steel bezel, the display is larger and the display edges are narrower. However, all these differences do not come out of the blue, because the Venu 3 also differs from the Vivoactive 5 in terms of price, which is $300 compared to $500. So ultimately it all depends on which features you are looking for. In my opinion, it only makes sense to pay the higher price for the Venu 3 if you want to use the smart features provided by this watch. Because all the other differences, like in terms of the sports and health features, they are really marginal and in my opinion not really worth the upgrade from paying $300 for the Vivoactive 5 to $500 for the Venu 3. It only makes sense if you use the smart features really. But now let me know in the comment section down below what you think of both watches. If you found this video helpful or interesting, you could really support me by giving this video a quick thumbs up, and if you don't want to miss other videos in the future, feel free to subscribe to this channel. But for now, thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.